131 minutes of footage left. There we are.
Well, you'll take 100 minutes of that.
Easily. I'll take all the footage that's left and then some more.
I'm looking forward to interviewing you for this because obviously it is your company whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's your idea, it's your baby. Right?
So I'm going to tell you this just as a heads up, more than anything else. Remember that Domination was meant to be all of the feds coming together. You mentioned it before. I don't know why I'm telling you that. What was the purpose of Domination?
From my understanding, Domination was supposed to be a group of feds from around the country meeting in one location to have a backyard meet up, and we're going to do like interpromotional matches, and we're going to share rosters and things like that. And we get there on the day, and there's one guy, which is K-Bar, and he there was another guy. There was Goo Goo Boy as well. Goo Goo Boy also came. But yeah. It sort of got there, and I remember a bunch of us standing around. All the UBW guys were there, and I remember us standing around, sort of thinking, right, where the fuck is everybody else? We could have just done this in Preston, but K-Bar came that day, and we used him. We had him in a couple of matches, and Goo Goo Boy as well. But it was kind of disappointing in the sense that we had all this hype, all this build up. I think there were about 5 other feds that were supposed to be there, and there was 2 guys who turned up. So it was a bit of a letdown in that sense. But the day itself was one of the most comically brilliant days that I've ever been a part of. It was so tragic and it was such a mess. But it was one of those ones that you'd never forget. Everything from the tarp. we bought this brand new tarp, which was in a box. And we take it out and it's about the size of a picnic blanket. And, we didn't even end up using it, but it was so many things. Everything from there was a phone call with Swimbad where he was going the wrong way or something, and he's yelling down the phone at, I think it was Pete. Champagne Mark was violently ill that day, so he wasn't doing well, and he forgot the belt, which it kind of worked out well for me because it transitioned into me becoming champion at the next show, but. It was like one of those things where it looks great on paper, it looks great, the hype was there, it was all built up, and we get there on a day and everything just fell apart.
Whereas we camping out as well, so we're having this night, we're doing a night of wrestling,
Yeah.
we're going to camp out, and then we're going to have another day of wrestling. And of course, no one thought of, because we'll run out of battery power on the phones. That's what we thought.
I remember vividly that the end of the night was like because we were staying over. We were supposed to be camping, and I remember we've got this like shitty little Tesco barbecue, right? And we sat there, and I remember looking over at Mark, who's sat there reading The Death of WCW. And the only light he's got is the fire from the stupid little barbecue we got. And I'm sat there thinking, how did it end up like this? This was supposed to be, like 50 people. It was supposed to be this big old, meet up and everything. And I'm sat here, it's 11:30 at night on like a Wednesday or something. I'm sat here looking at Mark Pearson at 11:30 at night whilst he's reading The Death of WCW. And I'm thinking, my God, what did I do to deserve this?
Oh, it was a calamity, wasn't it? So.
Oh man. But in all fairness, Domination I think is a very, very underrated show. I think when you look at the matches on it, you had a triple threat match with who was it? It was Pete, Swinney, and Johnny who was in that, and it was. That was a really good match. There were some really good spots in there. You had Goo Goo Boy versus the Freak, I think, where there was a ladder spot where the Freak kicked the ladder or Goo Goo Boy kicked the ladder and it went bang on his head. So you remember something from that. You had Johnny and Mark, for the non-title because it wasn't there. Which again, as Johnny and Mark, it wasn't ever going to be a bad match. I think it was all right. And then the last man standing match with me and Dave, where we flew off the 16-foot high wall. So it wasn't a terrible show. I think that the show itself was the best part of the day, but I won't ever think of it as a wasted day, regardless of what it was supposed to be. I think Domination was one of those days where you look back and you say, I'm actually glad I was part of
that. So after you had beaten Dave, that made Dave the number one contender, didn't it? So it made you the number one contender. Anyway, Dave transitioned into a feud with Johnny, which we got 4 great matches out of. What are your memories of the Johnny and Dave feud?
When we got to Domination, we realised that Mark didn't have the belt for reasons. We had to try and come up with a contingency plan to sort of get around the storyline. I can't remember if it was me who suggested that, okay, well, why don't we turn Johnny heel? If he's not going to win the belt, well, why don't we turn him heel? And we'll turn Dave. Dave's already a face. I was working with him. And then I think it was Mark who said, okay, well, then you've got to be a face. So basically coming out of Domination, it was going to be me feuding with Mark, and it was going to be Johnny feuding with Dave. And I remember watching Johnny and Dave, and the chemistry they had. I worked with both of them. The chemistry that both of those two had with each other was great. It was great to watch them. Any kind of match stipulation they had, any kind of situation they were putting together, they managed to make it work. And very rare that you find that with, especially people who you're not necessarily close with. Like I wouldn't have thought that they would particularly. I wouldn't have seen them in a bar having a beer together. But when they got in, into the situation where they're in a match, they managed to put on really good matches every time they got together. I don't remember them ever having a bad match, but they, their feud was really good. I would have probably said that if the only thing I would have done differently is if their feud had been for the belt, it would have meant a bit more because they never really got the main event because it was never for the belt. But every match they put on was worth watching.
What about Ace Pain feud and the I Quit match?
So whilst Johnny was off feuding with Dave, I ended up feuding with Champagne, and we never really we had one match before on a recoil, which was more of a filler match. It didn't really have any kind of backstory or any meaning to it. Then we got sort of to the title picture, and we thought okay, we're gonna have this match and we need to make it sort of. We had these spots planned. I remember I think it was Prove It that year. It was like the 1 year anniversary or something, and it was going to be me taking the belt off of Champagne, and we were going to do these spots. So we had the Jack Daniels spot and things like that, which really at the time I think it was good. And after that, we sort of said, because we're going to have a rematch, what can we do that's different? What can we do that's a bit more brutal, a bit more intriguing for everybody watching it? Because that match was good, but I don't know if people would have wanted to see it again. So I think we had to add something to it. So we came up with the idea to do an I Quit match, and it was again one of those situations where you plan for things and you hope for the best, and sometimes it just doesn't turn out the way that you think it's going to be. But when we started that match, it was I think maybe 2 of the spots we had planned we ended up doing. I think there was a guitar spot which we were going to do, and the finish. I think everything else was improv on the day. I don't remember ever sitting down and saying, "Oh, okay, well, you're going to pour Jack Daniels into his head." I don't remember that being a spot. I remember thinking, "Okay, we're going to make this brutal. We're going to make this, as violent as it can possibly be." That was the main premise of it. It wasn't to have a 20-minute classic. It was going to be a brutal match. I think I think looking back, he probably would have liked to get a bit more offense in. He would have liked it to be a bit more even. But yeah, I beat that guy to death for 20 odd minutes, and I had a lot of fun doing it. I'm assuming at this point you're going to cut to bits of the match with some heavy metal music playing in the background, like.
I think either while you're talking.
Yeah.
Come on, he's gonna do it. I'm just getting the footage for the boy. Would you say that the let's rephrase that question. A lot of people believe that the Prove It, Retribution, Relentless is UBW at its peak. Would you agree with that?
I think during the summer of 2009, UBW sort of reached the highest point it was going to get to. We got in that stage where it was like every show was topping the last one, and everything was really good that we were doing. It was almost like it couldn't go wrong. We were all hyped for the next show. We all wanted to just get back there the next month or whenever it was we were taping. And the following we had at the time was probably the highest it had been. I think the view count was the highest it was for UBW. A lot of the matches we had during that time were really good. I think the storylines were good. The only problem we had, I think, was at some point it's gonna sort of tip over and go down the other side. But for that time during the summer of 2009, everything from sort of Salvation through to Relentless was really good. I look back on that and I think that was UBW's peak. Why it went downhill afterwards, I don't know. I think, you know, again, we burnt ourselves out. I don't know, but that time then was what I think UBW will be remembered for.
I was gonna ask you about Relentless, but I don't know how to word it.
Me and Swinney.
Yeah. Question is, well, the question is, most people consider Relentless to be the best top to bottom UBW show. Do you agree with that?
I think Relentless probably was the best show UBW did. Everything from, you know, Champagne versus Crusher J, which opened it, to me and Swinney, which headline was. Sorry.
Wow, that really fucking hurt. Shit. Let's just whack my elbow.
There's one for the outtakes.
There you are. Boom.
Jeez. You made me lose my train of thought now.
Relentless. Do you think Relentless is the best show? And you said from the opener to the main.
Yeah.
As far as you go. Sorry, I'll do the same sort of thing.
Yeah. I think Relentless, from top to bottom, was the best show UBW had. Starting off when you had Crusher J versus Champagne, through to me and Swinney in the main event. Everything on that show was good. There wasn't a bad match on that show. The problem I had for most of the day was that we taped our match last, from what I remember, me and Swinney. And everything that we saw before it, I didn't even speak to Swinney that much during the day. We may have spoken once or twice, very briefly, about the match. We hadn't really. Again, it was one of those situations where we were going to call it. We on the fly. We didn't speak much about it. But I was sat there. I was watching all the matches that came before it, and I was thinking to myself, "God damn, we got to do something good," you know, because everything on this show so far has been really, really good. And I thought to myself, man, we're going to go out there and we're going to completely stink it out. You know, we're going to have this great show, and then you're going to get to the main event, and it's going to be, you know, Swinney, you know, doing what he does, which is great, and me trying to keep up with him. And for some reason, it worked, and the whole show came together. It was a really, really good show. And I think when you look back at all the shows in UBW history, Relentless, top to bottom, was the best one.
I agree with that statement completely. What about when we brought in guys from other feds? So you've just mentioned Crush J, Google Boy, K-Bar from SNW. We also brought in Alex Hart and Rye from TBW. Any recollections on how those happened, or?
I remember turning up one day and there's a group of people, not congregated as a group, but individuals who were at the taping who I had no idea who they were. And I remember I went to Mark and I said, who are these guys? You know, and they were guys from other feds, you know, who were interested in getting involved in UBW. And to me, that was sort of a, you know, feather in the cap. That was like, oh, okay, you got people from other feds who want to actually be part of ours. You know, when I came in, I wasn't part of a fed or anything. I was just a guy who wanted to be part of UBW. But these people, Alex Hart and Rye, they were, you know, that Crusher J, they were all from other feds. They were all established already, and they wanted to be part of UBW. So to have them come in, the roster kind of expanded, and we got all these new characters who we can, you know, put in storylines and work. And when the roster started developing, and we actually look around and we say, hey, look, we've actually got some good talent here, you know. And it was great to have, you know, more than just the usual sort of 6 or 7 of us who, you know, wanted to be doing UBW, to going to having maybe 12, 13 people, all who wanted to be part of this backyard wrestling fed. And that's really what I think UBW was. When you look back on UBW, you have a promotion that started off as nothing, and you took people from different parts of the country, from different walks of life, who never had any interaction with one another before, and somehow ended up coming together for the same reason, to want to wrestle in a field. You know, it takes a special person to want to do that anyway, but to have a special group of people want to come together and do that, that to me, that's what UBW is. I don't look back on UBW and think, oh yeah, it was all about violence, and, you know, oh yeah, we wrestled in a field because we couldn't get a ring, and we couldn't put videos out because we couldn't get the distribution or whatever. I look at it as, you know, hey, we managed to get all these people come together, and to me, that's what UBW was. UBW was the coming together of people who all shared a common interest and managed to actually make it work.
Good. So after we did, as I just mentioned, we did Prove It, Retribution, Relentless. They're considered the peak.
Yeah.
We then managed to put on Seasons Beatings, which stank, most people believe, and then we put on Redemption, which is even worse. What went wrong? Where did UBW lose its way, should we say?
Towards the end of 2009, it was almost like, when you're on a high and you got to have a come down at some point. Relentless, when we got done with it and it was put together and everybody had watched it, I know I was one of them. I don't know who else, if anyone thought the same way. I thought, we're not going to do better than this. And I think that's the mentality that kind of set the demise of UBW in motion, because we knew that we weren't going to top it. Regardless of what we were going to put together, we wouldn't have a top to bottom show that was ever going to be as good as Relentless. We had this string of great shows. The summer of 2009 was what UBW's peak was. Going into the winter with Seasons Beatings and then Redemption afterwards, it wasn't what it was beforehand. And I think a lot of people's mentality kind of went downhill after Relentless, because it was, if that was our peak, you're not going to reach it again. And that's what I think. I mean, I know for me anyway, when I look back on it, it was a case of nothing that happened after Redemption was worth what happened before it.
Because you had 2 matches with Johnny, which I think a lot of the UBW fans would say were dream matches, and just neither of them just lived up to the hype, did they?
Johnny and I were supposed to work 2 matches together towards the end of 2009, one at Seasons Beatings and then once again at Redemption. We had been talking about it for months, me and Johnny, like, it'll be so good to, wrestle each other, it's so good to, see what we can do. And we always got along, we never had a problem with each other, we always had a laugh together. It was when we got there and we actually got to doing the match, we stank. Me and Johnny had zero chemistry, absolutely none. We, like I said, we got on fine. There was no heat, if you want to call it that, between us. We were excited to work together, but just when it happened, it just didn't. There wasn't any. There was, to use a word, magnetism. Or magnetism, I should say. There was nothing there, and it sucked for me and Johnny, because we said when we did the Seasons Beating ones, we got after it, and we were just like, nah, that wasn't good. We can do better than that. And then we tried it again, and it rained, and it was bad, and it was just like, yeah, this just isn't going to work, and it sucked because we would have thought that me and Johnny together would have been able to do something really special, but it just didn't work. Johnny had good matches with everyone he worked with, except for me, and I will take that on my, I'll take the hit for that. For some reason, it just didn't work, and it kind of sucked because when the shows themselves, Seasons Beatings and Redemption, weren't great shows anyway, and I thought to myself, especially with Seasons Beatings, okay, well, me and Johnny we can save this one, we can do something good, and we ended up being just as bad as the rest of the show. So it was kind of sucky for us, but it's again, it all goes back to domination. It's like you look forward to something and you think it's going to be great, and then you get there and it happens and it's just.
I think Seasons Beatings is the better show of the 2, personally. By saying that, I haven't watched Redemption in years and years. I'm watching Seasons Beatings as we're recording this. Yesterday, I edited the first 2 matches of Seasons Beatings, which is the 4-way, which isn't bad. It's a bit of a clusterfuck. The top keeps coming undone. If you remember, they keep getting wrapped up in the top, so they have to stop to undo that. And then there's me and Dave, which just is not as good as the first match that we had by a mile. The first match we had, I absolutely love. One of my favourite backyard matches. That second one is not pretty, and then of course the third one's even worse.
I think it was Redemption when there was the tarp incident with Champagne, which is my personal favourite UBW moment of all time. There was the tarp we had anyway wasn't great, and it was a windy day, and I just remember I was filming, I was doing Dave versus Mark for their match, and there's this one spot where Mark drops Dave on his back, and Dave sort of he folded in half, and I remember he was being he knocked the wind out of him completely. He was holding his back. I thought he broke his back at the time, and Mark sort of after a couple of minutes, Mark sort of sort of beating on Dave on his back, and I'm sort of saying, Dave, sell it. And, not like he needed to. He was broken in half anyway. And then Champagne, for some reason, he punches Dave and he says, you hurt your back, have you? That's unlucky, being the dickish heel that he is. And in just this wonderful moment in time where he sort of waddles round to the side of the tarp for no reason whatsoever. He didn't need to waddle round there. And he trips and he catches his foot on the tarp and just goes bang. And it's like that one moment when time stood still, and you see him here where he's sort of on his hands and his knees, and he's sort of like, shit, I just realised what I've done. And I tell you what, every time I go back and watch that, it just brings a smile to my face, because it's one of those things where karma is so relevant, and it was such a wonderful moment. It was one of my favourite moments to be a part of, and oh, it never gets old. That was the thing. If Seasons, Beatings and Redemption were two bad shows, then it was worth it for that one moment. And I can't say more than that.
How do you feel...
I said that just so it would be in the documentary.
Yeah, I thought you might have done. How did you feel about us having our own show of Recall, as well as the free previews?
Doing one free preview, as we called it, a month, was good, but we wanted to get more exposure. We wanted to do more matches. We wanted to, once the roster was expanding, we wanted to have more, more shows, I guess. And having a weekly Recoil episode was a great way of doing that, because I think we had 3 matches, and we'd have promos on there, and they built up to the free preview. So I think Recoil was a great concept in the sense that it gave us a weekly exposure. But again, it's one of those situations where when it started, we were limited with how much we could do on there, because everything we were talking about was part of the free preview. All of our energy, all of our effort was going into writing the free preview. So the recalls, I think, whilst they were a great concept, I think they kind of suffered in a way because there wasn't that much attention put into them, which is why we filled them with promos. It was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, you're going to talk about this, you're going to do this, and then we're going to have this match. And I think if Recoil had been maybe a bit more planning had gone into it, then it would have delivered more. But I think the initial concept of Recoil, to have a show a week for UW, was a really good idea.
Yeah, because we did. We started off between when we started and Domination. There was 2 Recoils between free previews, and then for some reason after the Prove It taping, it was decided to just do the one.
Yeah.
And I always thought the show suffered for that. Because it meant you had to get everything. You had to say Prove It, for example. Prove It's been and gone. So now you've got to get to Retribution, and every step of the way has got to be on this show. So when it works, when it's me taking you out where you're doing a promo and challenging you into a match under I Quit rules, and then later on in the show we have we have the 3-way match, and at the end of it you cause Google Boy to beat me, and then you accept the challenge. Fucking brilliant. That's done and done. That's when it works. When you've got one person cutting a promo and the other person doesn't respond, it's just like, oh, so this is happening apparently, maybe, hopefully.
Right. Here. The biggest problem I had with Recoil, which is a lot of the problem I had with some of the build-up packages for the free previews as well, was that a lot of the footage was shot in people's homes just by them. So Dave had this horrific camera he used that made him very pixelated and everything. And I was filming, trying to get my phone to stand up on a windowsill, and it looked different. So when you're cutting back and forth between promos, it just doesn't look good. You had Champagne sitting in some dark thing with black and white, and it just... The reason why promos work when it's one person talking about another person, if they're shooting on the same day, at the same time, on the same show, is they're in the same place. We didn't have that at UBW. It was taken in very different places, and it was all put together just to try and make a story work. What would have been better is if we had saved it all and done it on the day. Of course, we didn't have time to do that, which is why we had to do it the way we did. But Recoil itself, if you put maybe more matches on there, less promos, because some of the matches that were on Recoil were actually really good. There was a tag match, I think, with me, Pete, Swinbad, and I think K-Bar. and it was a really good tag match. You know, it was fine, and it gets forgotten about because it was just, you know, who cares? You know, it's a Recall episode. You know, you watch it once and forget about it. It's almost like, you know, I think it was Chris Jericho who said, you know, you can have a great match in front of, you know, 400 people in a house show somewhere, but the next day it's forgotten about. You can have a great match on Raw, but again, it's on TV, next day, forgotten about. You save your good matches for your pay-per-views, which is what we did. We saved all our good matches for the free previews. So if we had put free preview quality matches on consistently on Recoil probably would have got a lot more attention. But back to the promo thing, when you're cutting promos together and you've got it from different places and different cameras and different, you know, if some of them are shot in like a square and some of them are shot widescreen, cutting that all together, it looks like shit. And, you know, who's going to watch that? Who's going to care about that? If more time and care had been taken and effort had been put into Recall, you know, would have been going a lot longer than it did. And people would have probably given it a lot more time and attention. I think Recall was used just to fill time rather than it was to get UBW the exposure it initially had the intention to. But it was, like I said, a great concept, and I think it was just a shame that it didn't work out in the way that we intended it to.
Yeah, because it was... The thing
I need to take a break.
I was going to say, I need you to shut the window because I've gone really cold. Is that part 2 then? 25 minutes, so we're up to about 50 minutes all told.